Good afternoon, my little knife nuts. It's wee Paddy from across the shuck, and you're very welcome here for my Saturday's ramble. I don't think I'd done one last week, and I kind of missed them. The rugby was on, but my rugby match is on tomorrow. Ireland are playing Scotland tomorrow, so I can't wait for that. So, slip joint knives. What are slip joint knives? What differentiates them between the modern, the traditional, the custom? And that's what I'm going to talk about today. And I've picked out four examples. Now, I could have put four Rough Riders out, or sorry, not four Rough Riders, but four of that price out. But I'm a show off and I like to pick knives that, that give me the greatest amount of pleasure. And it all started very simply. I'm in tracksuit, a thin pair of tracksuit today. I come in to pick a knife. It was this I picked to go in because it's thin and it's big enough that it'll do every task I need today. So it's one knife in the pocket and done. So I got this out and then I thought, well, what are people, the questions I get asked most are like, what's your favourite slip joints? Do you like modern slip joints? What do you think of the new Jack Wolf knife slip joints? And I thought, right, this is what I'm going to talk about today, is just slip joints and the different variations you can get in slip joints. So if you're a lover of modern knives, but you're getting a wee bit, and a lot of people are because of the likes of Jack Wolf and Tactile Turn, these new modern knives coming out, people are starting to try more slip joints. And I love that because it gives me pleasure seeing people going, oh, I didn't think I would like this as much. This is a good knife. This is a good tool because it just is. And they've been around for years, but you don't have to stick to fuddy-duddy ones. I love collecting the older ones because the aesthetic of them really gives me pleasure. But this is more for the modern person that's coming around, the younger knife collector or, knife user. So I pick knives that are pretty, they're attractive. Not that they're all not, but I mean, all knives are pretty in my head. But I thought I would start off. I've got a custom, I've got a traditional, I've got a modern interpretation of a traditional, and then I have just a modern slip joint. So that's the four categories that I would break it down to. And I'll go through each of these knives, not in great detail because you'll see there's videos on my channel. Go back and watch them on any of these knives. But I just want to give you a rough idea that what makes them what they are. So I'm going to start with this one. This is the custom. This is the cheapest of all these knives, probably about half the price of these, which I find totally astonishing for what I'm getting for my money. But it's a traditional, it's made by a little messer. Now, over in the UK, in Sheffield, where the knife began, the modern knife began, and that's it very loosely put. But in Sheffield, you had people who worked for larger companies making knives for them. Then, to make that little bit of extra money, they used to make custom knives of their own, usually in a tea break, which they weren't allowed, but they would have made them. And then the little messer was somebody who worked for a larger company, but then made knives as well on the side. And that's roughly what it is. It's more complicated than that. But so this is done by Ashley Harrison. Him and his father own Arthur Wright Knives. They produce them for the wide community. And then Ashley, who works for them, makes these in his spare time. And he does this in his spare time and not his work time because that's separate. So, and this is a full custom knife. It's made from start to finish by one person, or it might be two people. They have an apprentice and they'll do certain jobs to learn how to, get their craft and get through their apprenticeship. This is a completely fancy one. I don't mind showing this at all. This is an abalone, which is some of the nicest abalone. You don't see any join lines here, do you? It is absolutely stunning. Just the nicest I've ever seen. The most colour in it. Everything about this just pops my brain. If you want to get me excited, just get me one of these. So, and that's a God's truth. This excites me more than it should. It's a gorgeous knife. But some of the things that you'll get with a traditionally made knife that's done by hand, you'll get pins that are hafted off. You might feel them a little bit, but with this sort of a cover material, you have to be so careful. But these are pinned by hand. The hammer over, just pinned down by hand. There's no machine used to do this. The bolsters are made, they're stamped out by the man. They're shaped for the knife. The pull on this is about an 8, which is just gorgeous. I love this knife. The blade shape is gorgeous. It really is beautiful. All these are hand stamped by Ashley. This is in 01 tool steel, which is a fantastic tool steel for everyday use. It's hard. It'll hold an edge for a really good time. And it's just a gorgeous knife. Not particularly thick, which no slip joint should be particularly thick. Although, if you want to go into the bigger models in these, yes, they will. As you go into the bigger mountain men, say, a mountain man knife, they're a big thick blade. But most of the ones that I carry are going to be of this thickness. One, because they're a great slicer, an absolutely amazing slicer, because they're all thin behind it. Most of them, I shouldn't say all. Maybe some of the cheaper ones will be a little bit thicker behind the edge, like the Rough Rider. Still perfectly good knives, and knives that I collect as well. But most of the ones, when you go up the range, will be a little bit thinner behind the edge than most. So slicing for cutting up your sandwich at lunchtime, taking out if you want to eat your lunch and you haven't got a knife, this is the one that will cut up your sausage. But gorgeous, all done by hand, all hafted by hand. And this one actually has file work on the back, even the brass liners. Then you've got the spine of the knife, the spring. It is traced up the back with this, like an ivy leaf crawling up a wall. That is done by hand. The others are done by file. This is done by a hammer and chisel going up through the spine of the knife, which Ashley's father, Michael, does, and Ashley done the rest of the file work. But I wanted to get a knife that had both of them on it, because I'm pretty close to them, and I love the fact that I've got father and son on this knife, which makes it incredibly sentimentally just over the moon. Just really does, please. But look at the work on it. Look at the lines where these are joined. There's just conformed perfectly. Absolutely beautifully done inside. This is stopped by a kick. It's not that modern version, which we'll talk about later on. This is just the kick of the knife stops this blade bouncing on the back of the knife. The action on it, there's no half stop on this one, although he does do half stop ones. Listen to that. It is just stunning. It really is. So this is a proper traditional knife made by a true craftsman. Perfect. I love this knife. This is also a traditional knife, but this is more of a knife now that's sort of where traditional knives have started to move from the sort of 19th century into the 20th century. You got better materials, better blade steels. Although this is no better blade steel than that. This is 1095. But this is a beauty with bone, and I dyed this one. No, I didn't. Yeah, no, I didn't dye this one. Can't remember. No, I didn't dye this one. This came with this red bone, saw cut bone. It's lightly saw cutted, but you can see some of the little differences with this modern made traditional knife. This is made by GEC for Northwoods, Derek Bones Company, God rest his soul. And it's this. Well, look, that's all I can call it, is a butt plug. It's supposed to be an arrowhead. To me, it's a butt plug. And once you've seen it, you can't take it away. But this is, Northwoods all have this shield on them. The modern Northwoods have this, they leave the burn on after they've tempered the knives. This one is in, a saber grind. So it's not as thin behind the edge as this would be. This is a real good work knife for precision knife. I use this a lot. Again, it's a very expensive knife. This is an easy open. It has the easy open notch on it here for pulling it out. Bone at saw. They try to imitate all sorts of things with bone, like bone stag, and they have worm groove patterns. Everything goes into the bones, and that's very traditional. But this is just a lovely example of a higher end slip joint. Traditional slip joint, because it's made the traditional way. Although if you look at these pins, they're spun. So there's a machine does these pins rather than ones that are just pinned by a hammer. These are all perfectly formed. And that's good, because it makes this knife, a real classy looking knife. There's no rough. Sometimes when you're pinning, you'll get a little bit of a rough edge, or it'll not flatten particularly flat, or that'll not go. A lot of pinning is done with a roundy edge with a little pinning hammer. And I've got one here just, this is what I use. It's just a little hammer. It's a brass hammer, and you can have the hardened plastic end if you want. But that's used to pin over the pins. So all constructed, as I say, by hand, which is beautiful. This is all stainless. This one, but a gorgeous example of a traditional knife made in a semi-traditional way, because they're using more of the modern practices, like how they do their blades, maybe how they make certain parts of the knife. It is more modern with more modern machinery. But GEC still uses an awful lot of hand finishing on their knives, which makes them expensive, but that's what you're going to pay for if you want it. There's plenty of other knives out there that not as expensive, that you can buy and use, and they'll not use much better than this. But this is because of the hand finishing that goes into it, and that traditional method that is used over at GEC. And they're only a modern company. They only came out in 2006, but they're led by, oh God, the man's name's gone out of my flipping head now. I know him like my brother, but he took on the mantle of GEC when he left Queen. He was the designer for Queen and moved over, and now runs GEC and has done since 2006. And he makes an amazing knife. His fit and finish, his quality control is excellent, which again is what you want in a knife. So that's a custom traditional slip joint made in the traditional way. This is a traditional slip joint made in the traditional patterns and way, but using maybe slightly more modern materials or tools, especially in machinery, into making the knives. But still, both traditional knives, full traditional. Then we go on to a modern traditional, which is the Jack Wolf knives. And this one here is, you'll notice all these are about the same size. Anywhere from 3.5 inch to 4 inches closed is the knife I love, because they all fit my hand perfectly, and they're big enough to do everything I want, yet they're small enough that you can put them in your pocket and they don't take up a lot of space, even in a slip, which I put most of these in a slip. But this is a Jack Wolf knives version of a modern traditional. Absolutely stunning. Ben has designed an absolutely stunning knife, and they remind me of traditional knives because of the patterns that he's using. Yes, he tweaks them a little bit here and there, but this is a straightforward pattern, and this is the same as that's a boy's knife size, which is about 3.5 inches, and that's just slightly bigger. But 3.5 inches boy's knife is my favourite size of a knife. I can still get 4 fingers on when I'm up, because you got this ricasso here, which can be a bit higher than this, but it's high enough that's up there, so I get 4 fingers on it. I can do as much work as I need to do, usually about a 2.5 inch cutting edge on the blade. Perfect for all your needs. So this is a modern one. Why is it modern? It's modern materials, and the fixtures on it are very modern. So you'll have titanium on them. You'll not get many traditional knives made with titanium. All the screws are torque screws, i.e. you can take this knife apart. These two knives you can't take apart unless you're talented, and I am definitely not in that category. These are knives you don't have to take apart to clean. You just wash them through, squirt air through it, put under the tap, run it through hot water to get the oil out, and then re-oil it again. That's all you have to do in these. You don't need to ever take them apart. This I probably will never take apart, although there's screws to do it. The nice thing about this one, though, I had the micarta versions. This is the carbon fibre, but I had the micarta versions, and I was able to take the 2 scales off just on their own to writ dye them, and I found that really useful, and it was really nice to be able to do that. But I didn't go into the inner parts of it, with the screws are underneath this carbon fibre here. But this is all one piece. The bolsters aren't made separately like you would on a traditional knife. This is all one piece of titanium. The bolster here running down the scales of the knife here, and down around the bottom and the bolster. So it's all one piece. They cut this little bit out here. It's a very thin piece out, if you can see. It's rounded a little bit, which is nice in the hand, makes it but this just then plunks on and screws onto the top of this. And they call that an integral, because the whole of the scales is integral. It's all one piece, and all you're doing is adding a little top bit to it. Fantastically made. We don't even know the company that makes them, but it matters not a jot, because I'm getting a knife that is stupendous. The other thing about it is, This one's in M390, but the newer iterations are now coming out with S90V, which is just phenomenal steels for a pocket knife. When you take it, this is 01 and 1095. The difference in this steel is just you can cut with this for weeks and never having to sharpen it, and a simple strop usually brings it straight back. So that's why it's modern. It's modern materials, modern use of pinning them together. They're not pinned, they're screwed. The blade steels can be this outrageously high blade steel that we don't really need, but we've got it. And that's the other thing. It's the sort of thing, we've got it. I don't need a fancy pants knife like this, but I've got it. And then I don't need a blade steel like this for an EDC knife. I don't need that, but I've got it. And if I ever wanted a knife that would work all day and not go dull on me, this is perfect. Absolutely perfect. So I really do love this. Do I love these as much as my GECs and my sort of Ashley Harrison custom or other custom makers? Although I haven't found anybody that I like as much as Ashley. And that's just the truth. Do I like this as much as my traditional knives, my GEC knives? Yes, I like it as much, but if you were to force me, and I had to be forced on some podcast I was on this last week. And people always ask this, which one will you choose, the GEC or the Jack Wolf? For me, my GEC, because it's more of a traditional knife and it's my style of patterns that I like and love. This is in a separate part of my brain along with this, as in it's modern. These are traditional, and these two, the last two, are modern. It's made with modern machinery. It's cut out to exact standards. It's got a full hollow grind from top to bottom, which is completely even all the way along, down to a screaming edge, which is just phenomenal. But it's still a modern, and my heart is with the traditional. But do I collect all different 4 types here? Absolutely, because I'm a knife nut, and I do. And I love using this as much as I love using these, but in my heart, I'm a traditional knife maker. Should that be the old traditional knives that cost me £20-30? Yes, they'll always become first in my heart. It's not saying anything bad about these, it's just that's my collecting style. So the Jack Wolf knives, I just think, are the best modern interpretation of a traditional knife out there today. I personally haven't held anything better than this. I just genuinely haven't. It's phenomenal. The fit and finish, everything. Listen to that. Listen to that. Oh, it's just gorgeous. So there's that. Now, so we've got custom, traditionally made. We have a modern traditional. And this is a modern interpretation of a traditional. The last one, which is getting more and more exciting to me, is just a slip joint. It's just a slip joint. That's all I call this. It's a modern slip joint. It's nothing to do with traditional. Take that. These have something to do with, these two are definitely traditional. This is something to do with these, but these modern slip joints are just exactly what they are. They're modern slip joints. They're not meant to be taken as one of these, but they're the same sort of size. I mean, you can get them the same size. This is thinner than all of them. And it has a blade stock with Magna Cut. Yeah, I got it right. With Magna Cut, it's got a clip point blade, but it's not. This is literally a modern slip joint. That's all it is. A modern slip joint. It is phenomenal. It's got a couple of these. This is just a tactile turn made pens. They now make the knives, and their pens are renowned for their milling on them. And they have this on the handle of the knives. These are made in America, which is fantastic. And all these are different. This is made in America. This is made in America. This is made in the UK. So this is made in China. Sorry, China, America, UK. So you got 3 different continents making knives. Not that the UK is a continent, but so this is absolutely. I've fallen in love with this. Look how thin that blade is, with Magna Cut steel, which is the top in all 3 metallurgy standards of, stain resistance and toughness. So this is just a gorgeous little knife. But I don't confuse it with any of these. This is just a modern knife, and it happens to be a slip joint, if that makes any sense. There's no pinning or anything on here. These are all screwed materials. Absolutely stunning. And the work, the finishing on these, the hafting, is second to none. I'll have to say it's one of the best finished knives, with the rounded over edges all the way around, even on the inside. You can't catch that. It is stunning. And with MagnaCut, you have a real strong, tough blade. It's not going to rust, and it's going to have edge retention to last you days. And that's what the steel was made for, to have them three things that you want in a knife. And it makes it very modern. Beautiful half stop, but you don't have that crack that you get on a traditional knife, and a bit dull because it's fully enclosed with titanium and then the steel liners, or the steel backspring. But I have to say, absolutely, I'm just doting on this knife. I think it is absolutely fantastic. And I think, yeah, there's a couple of wee things. It's off centre. It doesn't go right down the centre, but it's a very thin pocket, if you can see. There's not much. That really exaggerates, but when you look at the top of the knife, there's not much room either side for that blade. So the slightest wee bit off, that takes it over to fully centered, but it doesn't affect anything up there. It literally is a tiny little thing. But over the time, I hope they'll get that perfected. But I still don't regret spending the money I spent on it, because I'm in at the beginning, and that's what I like to be. It's lovely to get in the beginning on something, and I love this knife. So I hope that, I know I've gone on for 20 minutes, but I hope that breaks down the different categories for you, and lets you see what there is out there. So you have this wide variety of this, and then you get different patterns in all these, which is another story. And you get different blade shapes, and for different purposes. All knife blade shapes come out where they cut, but over the year they've been refined by the makers for specific jobs as well as everyday jobs. And that's lovely, and that's my joy in the traditional, because I think more about that in a modern knife. I don't tend to, that doesn't, the blade shape, yes, it's important, but as long as it looks okay with a knife, I'm happy with it. I have certain patterns that I just die for with traditional knives. And you've seen clip points. They're my favourite, but they're not the knife I would use to go where I'm not sure what sort of work I've got to do. So again, patterns, traditions, there's so many out there. But I hope this is just a breakdown of the four that I think are the main four, and the questions I get most asked about on my channel. So I shall leave you with my Saturday ramble. I've really enjoyed talking to you. I hope it makes sense. If you think I've said anything out of place, please put it down below. I'm not an expert. I'm wee Paddy. I just like knives. Please subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed. I would love to come over and see what sort of content you can see. Hit the wee like button and hit the bell button, and then let you know when I upload videos, which is very regular. So I'll keep you mind numb for hours on end. Take care, folks. Don't forget, thumbs up. Bye bye now.